Hello, welcome to Legal Learning. My name is Paul Yoon with Coast to Coast Legal Aid, and today we're going to discuss victims' rights enforcement, a new partnership. Next. I'm going to begin with some brief introductions here. I've listed two additional names as along with mine. There are two sister organizations in Broward County. The first, Legal Aid Services Broward County. They also represent victims of crime, and I will elaborate on some of these differences between Legal Aid Service and with Coast to Coast Legal Aid, who I am currently with. Next. So just some brief acknowledgments about our program here. This project was made possible by a sub-grant from the National Crime Victim Law Institute. There's some language here that's not important, but it's pursuant to the grant number 2018 V2GX K18. And it was awarded to NCVLI by the Office of Victims of Crime, Office of Justice Programs, and the U.S. Department of Justice. Next, please. Okay, so who are we? So in 2018, the National Crime Victim Law Institute launched a National Victims' Rights Enforcement Project called RISE. RISE stands for Rights and Systems Enforced, after receiving a grant from the U.S. Department of Justice, Office for Victims of Crime. Legal Aid is one of the 6 sub-grant recipients of this project. As a part of the RISE project, 4 victim rights attorney positions were created here at Legal Aid. 2 attorneys will be working or are working with the Legal Aid Service of Broward County, and 2 are working with Coast to Coast Legal Aid of South Florida. Again, I am one of those 2 for Coast to Coast Legal Aid of South Florida. Each program has a paralegal. We even have a social worker to work with victims as well. But here's the point. We represent victims and assert their rights during the criminal proceedings at no cost to victims. This program has no financial guidelines or restrictions, and I'm going to elaborate on what these rights are for victims of crimes. Next, please. All right, so let's get this out of the way. Who is a victim? A victim is a person who suffers direct or threatened physical, psychological, or financial harm as a result of the commission or attempted commission of a crime or delinquent act or against whom the victim or the crime or the delinquent act is committed. The term victim includes the victim's lawful representative, the parent or guardian of a minor, or the next of kin of a homicide victim. These definitions are directly from the Florida Constitution, Article 1, Section 16, which we in the community, the legal community, know as Marxist Law, and I will discuss that here shortly. Next, please. Okay, so here's Marxist Law. To summarize how this came about in Florida, in 2018, during the November elections, there was Amendment 6, Marxist Law, that was passed by the majority vote, or by 60% of the vote. That in turn became codified, I believe, around January 8th of 2019. Now, Marxist Law, which is victims' rights law, is codified in the Florida Constitution under Article 1, Section 16. It is law throughout all 67 counties here in Florida. So the background of Marcy's Law is what follows here. So Marcy's Law was named after Marcy Nicholas of California, who was stalked and killed by her ex-boyfriend way back in 1983. Only 1 week after her death, Marcy's mother and brother, Henry T. Nicholas, walked into a grocery store where they were confronted by the accused murderer. Here was the problem. The family, who had just come from a visit to Marcy's grave, was totally unaware that the accused had been released on bail. Marcy's mother was not informed because the courts and law enforcement, though well-meaning, had no obligation to keep her informed of what was going on with the criminal case. In an effort to honor his sister, her brother formed Marcy's Law for All in 2009 to give victims and their families constitutional protections and equal rights under the law. Defendants have rights under the law. Now it's time for victims to have rights as well. And that's what Marcy's Law effectively is. Marcy's Law went into effect in Florida on January 8th, 2019. Next, please. Okay, so what rights do crime victims have in Florida? Next slide, please. When I first talk to a victim, I always explain to them, a prospective client, I should say, that even though they may know these rights, most victims of crimes do not know what to do with them, how to apply them, how to advocate them. And that's where us attorneys come into play. So these are some, these are not all of them, but these are some of the most relevant rights I would like to briefly bring to your attention. So every victim is entitled to the following rights beginning at the time of his or her victimization. Two key points there. They're entitled to these that I've listed here, and they apply at the beginning of the time of his or her victimization, which means that the moment a crime occurred, whether it's been reported or if the state attorney's office files a case against the accused, these rights attach right then and there when the crime has occurred. So what are these rights? Right to due process and to be treated with fairness and respect for the victim's dignity. Right to be free from intimidation, harassment, and abuse. Right to be reasonably protected from the accused and anyone acting on behalf of the accused. Right to have the safety and the welfare of the victim and the victim's family considered when setting bail. Right to prevent disclosure of information that can be used to locate the victim or the victim's family. These are important that they are entitled to these because often, in my experience with these types of cases, the accused or the defendant, we'll call him or her, does try to harass or intimidate or try to get an alleged victim to recant or not participate in the case. Well, now the victim is protected under these rights so that we can stop that from happening. So once again, right to be free from intimidation, to be protected, and to have a safety and welfare. Next, please. So these subset of rights are different because they are upon request, as the slide states there. So what are these? Right to timely notice of and to be present at and to be heard at all public proceedings involving the criminal conduct. Right to confer with the prosecutor regarding pleas, sentencing, and disposition of the case. Those first two that I just read are critical because as the explanation of how Marxist Law came about, the issue was that the family of the deceased was not notified of certain proceedings in the criminal case. In that situation, the defendant's release. Now, under the law, that can be prohibited upon request. Victims have a right to know what's going on in these cases, so something like that doesn't happen again. The right to, like I mentioned, the right to confer with the prosecutor. The prosecutor needs to speak with the victim. The prosecutor cannot go and willy-nilly do what they think they should do for a case. They have to confer with the victim of a specific criminal case so that the victim's voice is heard and that the impact is there as well as to what type of justice is served for the criminal act. Right to be informed at every stage of the criminal case. That kind of goes along with what I mentioned a few moments ago. Right to proceedings free from unreasonable delay. That has been a little an issue since COVID-19, but that has been an issue that we've really had to face and push against to have a criminal case move forward. And the right to full and timely restitution. Restitution, if there was any medical bills because of injuries suffered from a certain criminal act or any kind of damage to property, victims have a right to full and timely restitution through the criminal case. Next, please. Okay, so why should crime victims have an attorney? I kind of elaborate on this at the beginning. I tell my prospective clients, you may know these rights, but you don't know necessarily what to do with them in a criminal court, and that's where we come into play. We will advocate, we will make sure that these rights that I mentioned earlier are advocated for and protected. We as attorneys will be kind of the liaison to make sure that we speak with the prosecutor in a case, or if necessary, speak to a defense attorney in a case, all on behalf of our client, the victim of the criminal case. So like I said, many victims do not know, they don't even know some of these rights, not to mention how to request or enforce them during a criminal proceeding. So that's where we come into play with our legal expertise. Next, please. Before I go into this slide, I just want to make something clear. There's a misunderstanding often with our clients that the state attorney represents the victim. That's actually not the case. The state attorney represents the state of Florida because a defendant has broken the law of Florida. They have not broken the law of the victim, so to speak. So they represent the state of Florida, and they do their best duty to confer and keep in touch with the victim. But we as victim rights attorneys represent the victim, him or herself, specifically. So I just want to make that distinction. Okay, so as part of our program here at Legal Aid, what should crime victims, why should crime victims have a social worker? So as part of our program, we do have other parts of this where we can assist certain victims. A social worker is part of our team, where they can help with crisis intervention, certain types of advocacy that may be outside of the courtroom, any kind of accompaniment, again, for issues maybe that are strings attached from a criminal case, but outside of the criminal courtroom. And also our social worker provides certain resources throughout the community to help certain victims get on their feet. We deal with local shelters every week, and we just try to provide some holistic support for our victims as well through our social worker service. Next, please. Okay, so this is just, if you want to look for more information, I have a little link here on the slide to stay up to date and visit the project at law.lclerk.edu. You can click on that link and then see what we do, what this national project is, and what the other, as I mentioned, there were 6 of these organizations, of these projects throughout the United States. And if you were interested in looking what other projects do, I believe the information is there. Next, please. Okay, so this slide is included for anybody out there who may know someone who is dealing with domestic violence, or another general victim of crime. If you're looking to help that individual, here's what you can do. Call us. The next slide will provide that contact information, but contact our legal aid office with Legal Aid of Broward County or Coast Legal Aid of South Florida. If, once again, your workplace, family, friends, if they are looking for answers because they're a victim of crime, you can refer them to us, our office. If you have an office or some kind of organization that's interested in working with us, we have flyers as well. We can help distribute flyers, or you can distribute the flyers, so that this project gets throughout our Broward County community to help victims of crime. One thing I forgot to mention, and I'll make this very brief here. Coast to Coast Legal Aid, myself, we specifically represent victims of domestic violence. I believe I forgot to elaborate on this earlier. So intimate partner violence, to be more specific. Girlfriend, boyfriend, 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 girlfriend, girlfriend, husband, wives. That's what we specifically do and represent those victims of crime. Legal Aid of Broward County represents pretty much victims of all other crimes. So that's how we kind of separated the distinction between who they assist and who we assist. So if it's a domestic violence issue or an intimate partner violence issue, Coast to Coast Legal Aid is who you want to contact. If you know a victim or you are a victim of any other crimes, felony, even sometimes misdemeanors, Legal Aid Service of Broward County is who you want to call to see if we can assist you. Next, please. So once again, I'll end with this, our contact information. As you can see there, Legal Aid, there's 2 attorneys there as well, and then Coast to Coast Legal Aid of South Florida. It's just me right now, but those are the attorneys that are working throughout the county to represent victims of crime. So thank you for watching. Tune in Thursdays at noon for more legal learning. Join us next week for military sexual trauma with our each unit. And that's once again next Thursday at noon. Thank you very much.